Welcome to SaveOne Podcast, where we document real-life stories of hope and encouragement with a raw, authentic, and unfiltered approach. Join us as we aim to be the beacon of light in the storm of life that gives hope and direction to those who are struggling to find their way in the storm. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you joining us. We're actually live on Facebook, we're live on TikTok today. I have with me Amanda Johansson with Clinton PD, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. I want to know more about. I want to bring more awareness to, and that's crimes against children. And so that's why I've brought Amanda in. She is a detective with Clinton PD here in Mississippi. Y'all are also probably familiar with her. She is a co-host on Investigation Homicide with our great friend Rast. And so we're kind of all connected here a little bit. We all record here with Audio Alchemy with Daniel Anderson. And so you'll see us back and forth on each other's podcasts just because we're actually a network of friends. Even the guys over at Black Sheep, stuff like that. I mean, a lot of us are connected. So Amanda, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I know this is a topic you have some firsthand experience on, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad that Rast kind of threw my name out there whenever you were looking for someone, and it's cool to be here on a different day of the week and getting to talk about something that I've kind of worked kind of throughout my career. I'm in like 13 years. And so I've gotten to work these types of cases, and for whatever reason, God has said, this is what you're good at, and this is what you're going to do. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, on that note, I'll also say, I mean, in my time in law enforcement, thank you, because that's not an easy job to have. It's one I've had a lot of interest in. It's one, if I end up back in law enforcement at some point, I would like to pursue, but I'm even kind of hesitant about it because I know that it's really hard. The cases I have seen and I know about, and maybe I was, first patrol there before it got handed off to detectives like yourself. It's really hard to deal with some of these calls.
It definitely can be, especially if you are a victim yourself. I know that there are a lot of people in law enforcement, because law enforcement's not immune, but, this stuff is rampant throughout humanity. People are victims of this, and then they grow up, and sometimes that is why they become a police officer, is to be the person that gets to help because maybe an officer had an impact in their life and helped. So those people aren't necessarily the best people to work these types of cases. It's a lot of trauma. And we're definitely in need of more male officers that are comfortable with working these types of cases. It's one of those things where you get a lot of cops who are kind of manly men, and they're like, I'm going to go in, and I couldn't let them, walk out without a black eye or worse. And that's just not, it doesn't help the case. It doesn't help the victim. And so I would highly encourage that if you got back into law enforcement, pursue it, because we don't have enough males. Yeah. Typically it's just thrown off on the female. They're maternal. They'll be good at working these cases.
Yeah.
So.
You saying that, I can totally agree with that. And I know some guys, I have friends that they all say that, man, I can't work those cases. The people would never leave the house. And I get it. Like that would, don't get me wrong. I wish, say this hesitantly, I wish it could be open season on them and go hunt them down. And that's kind of something that I like and don't like. It's kind of gotten popular on social media a little bit. There's a lot of these guys, and it'll be civilian guys that, they'll bait in a social predator, kind of pin them at Walmart or something like that. Yeah, they'll embarrass the heck out of them. They'll, slap them around, some stuff like that. But every time I watch it, it's like, man, I'm glad they're getting that, but they're going to reviolate because they're not getting a conviction. They're not working toward actually protecting the victim and then prosecution and getting them put in jail. And so that's something I definitely, as I go down my list of things I want to cover, I really want to cover that, because I know it's very difficult to prosecute these.
It definitely can be, depending on the agency that you work for and how gung ho they are for pursuing these cases. The kind of county that you work
Mm-hmm.
in and the DA's office plays a big role in whether these cases move forward or not. And then, of course, the victim and their family plays a huge role as well. So it can be difficult. You hit a lot of walls.
Yeah, that's you say that I'll bring this up now because I may forget it in a little bit. And I cannot remember this gentleman's name, but he's actually ex-Navy SEAL. I think he's over in Alabama. He has a foundation where they go and hunt these guys, and he essentially reverse engineers the process though, and it's so smart. I watched this whole interview on Sean Ryan's show. If he goes, he has an agency that they'll come into any department, help train on this topic, and then they set up a sting. But his first meeting every time he goes into somewhere new is with the DA, because every DA, county to county, he said, will be different, and they will give him very specific. We need this age, this evidence, all this stuff, and so they reverse engineer it to where they get their targets are exactly who they're looking for, so they just streamline straight to prosecution.
Yeah, that's definitely really smart. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless
Yeah.
if you're going to put in all of that work and all the manpower just to package it up and take it to a DA's office, and they're like, no, it doesn't meet our criteria, so we're going to pass on this one.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking for everyone involved. Very frustrating as well.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's jump into one of the first things I want to talk about, because one of my goals today is to bring more awareness to people. Obviously, you and myself, we're right here in central Mississippi, right outside Jackson. The agencies you've served with, I've served with, we're all right here central Mississippi. So I know a lot of your knowledge is going to be here. And so my first question, the first thing I want to cover and make people realize is, how rampant is it here? How prevalent is it here? Because a lot of people, I mean, even family members of mine, that when this topic comes up and I'm like, no, it happens right here. And they're like, oh no, not like other places. No, it happens right here. And a lot of people don't realize we have, they don't think about, we have 55 and I-20. So when we start talking human trafficking and stuff like that, we have one of the biggest intersection points in the United States for that as well. So talk a little bit about that. How common is it around here?
It is far more common than people realize. I don't know all of the statistics, but one thing that kind of sticks in my mind, and if I am misquoting a stat, I apologize, but I believe that it's 1 in every 3 males has been a victim of some type of sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And that's just males. So take that across, male, female. This kind of abuse happens everywhere. And kind of, there is no like best time that it happens, anything like that. There are certain areas, more rural areas tend to have things more like the familial trafficking, as opposed to your stereotypical pimp type trafficking. But this kind of stuff is, gosh, I wish that it wasn't as prevalent as it is. It's just unfortunate that people don't report it. There are a lot of kids that have delayed disclosures. So something will happen to them, and it is either a family member or a close family friend, and that person will either scare them into not telling because the kid thinks that they're going to get in trouble, or they make a promise, and kids are, they believe in promises, like pinky promise, or they give them gifts so that they don't tell. And so it might take weeks, months, even years for them to make a disclosure. And then there's always the concern of the person they disclose to, maybe they don't believe them.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that people choose not to believe children. I'm aware that there's always that one-off of a kid just making up something to get attention, but even in doing that, typically there's some underlying issue of why are they seeking attention. But this stuff happens in the home. Grandparents, I've worked cases with uncles. I really haven't worked a lot of cases where a female is the offender, but I know that it happens. It's just probably that, unfortunately, the one example that comes to mind is, a teenage boy, and he gets to hook up with his teacher,
Yeah.
his hot teacher, and that's a fantasy, but that's a sex crime against a child. A lot of guys would tell their buddies and they would high five, but this is a horrible, horrible crime that unfortunately just doesn't get reported.
Yeah. I know. So I watch most of my, I guess you'd say, knowledge on this is I watch a lot of podcasts that cover this topic. I've read a lot about it, stuff like that. I haven't worked cases like you have as much. But one of the things as I dug into it more and more, especially the last couple of years, and a big part of me digging into it more was also I'm a father now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I have a 7-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. And so it was something that got much more on my mind when I became a father. And so this is pretty disturbing, but that's kind of why I want to talk about this today is what a lot of people don't realize is the grooming factor. And the grooming starts on a lot of kids when they're infants.
Mm-hmm.
And that's disturbing. And when I say it starts at infants, I mean, they're raping babies.
Yeah.
And so what that does is kind of like you said, why do they not report till later in life? Well, they thought it was normal. If dad's doing that to me, if my uncle's doing that to me, if my brother's doing that to me, they're training them to think that that is normal life. And a lot of times they don't get to learn that that's normal until they're teenagers or in their 20s. And we're going to talk about how to protect kids, but like my 7-year-old and 3-year-old, I talk to them about this stuff. Like when I give them baths, nobody else can ever touch you other than me and mama and grandparents when we're bathing you, and I want to make them aware of like, no, this is not normal. And there's little things like I'll talk about in a little bit more, but I don't bathe my kids without a sponge.
Yeah.
I don't want them to think that anybody touching their body is okay, because if it happens, I want them to instantly recognize, hey, this isn't right. This isn't normal. So.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing, is for parents to talk to their kids about this. I don't know if it is a Southern thing or if it's just an uncomfortable parent-kid relationship where they don't want to talk about their bodies and their body parts, how the body works. It just makes adults uncomfortable. And I think it's hilarious because like everyone has the same body parts. Like teach your kids what these body parts are called, teach them what they do, teach them, what is okay and what is not okay, because that's the only way that they are going to be able to protect themselves. Because they are the ones that are there experiencing the thing, and they're going to be the only ones that can tell you if something did or did not happen.
Yeah. And to go back to what you said earlier, like it is common that when a kid says something, especially a very young kid, people are like, oh, no, that probably didn't happen. Or maybe they misunderstood it. Well, if you've already started, like, I mean, I have my daughter's 3 and I talk about it all the time to her. Well, if she comes to me when she's 5 or 6 and says somebody touched me somewhere, God help you when I find you.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna know that she understands that, hey, something happened out of the normal. And like you said, I don't know why so many people are scared to have that conversation. But education on any topic, education is the first way of preventing it. And so I wish more people would, take the time to teach their kids that. And then recognize kind of what I want to get into next is the indicators of a predator.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to talk about that some, get your thoughts on that. What are some of those indicators? What's that profile?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly one particular profile for a predator.
Nope.
But there are definitely signs. Adults who are just too close to a kid. Maybe it's not their kid, so maybe they're not the parent, but they are the family friend or the aunt, the uncle, whatever, and they pay more attention to that kid than any other kid. They buy them extravagant gifts. They offer to take them out of town. They are offering for them to sleep over, and when they sleep over, they have them sleep in their bed. None of those individually are a key indicator of someone who commits these types of crimes. But when you look at them all together, it should definitely throw a red flag.
Yep.
And if you get that like hair on the back of your neck that stands up, trust your gut. Even if they're not doing something to your child that's inappropriate, they may still not be the best influence for your child. And then, of course, you do have the parents who maybe they pay special attention to that kid, or maybe they talk to that kid about the parent's sex life, or they might show them pornography, trying to, quote unquote, educate them. Lots of things could be indicators, but I don't know that there's any like set. If these things occur, this is absolutely a predator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like how you say that, because from my knowledge, this is the hardest topic because there's not a profile. From what I know, it's easy to spot certain criminal activity. And if people can call it profiling all day, it's exactly what it is. It is profiling. But what scares me the most is a lot of the cases I see and I hear about and I read about, it's the coaches. Mm-hmm. It's the people at church. It's the pastors. It's the youth pastors. It's the uncle who keeps the kids after school. It's, the family member that the parents, I've heard of a few cases like this. Parents pass away, family members take custody of them, and the next thing you know, they're molesting them or letting other people molest. Mm-hmm. And so it's the business guy next door that looks great, is wealthy, has a great family, he's a deacon at church, and nobody would ever think he does anything wrong, and he's one of the worst predators. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what scares me so bad about this, is it's not the guy that looks like a criminal. Mm-hmm. And that freaks me out so bad.
Yeah, it is. I don't have children. I'm even hesitant to let someone keep my dog because unfortunately I have worked cases where when they have child related pornography, a lot of times they also have animal related pornography, and I'm just like, I would hurt somebody if they mess with my dog. So let alone if I had a kid. So I get all of that. But yeah, it is you have this natural distrust for everyone, because once you're aware of it, you're just constantly like, that could be a predator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things. If you spend even a few months in law enforcement, you learn about so much so fast that it puts you on guard against everything.
Yeah.
I was at a pool not long ago with my kids. And there was just this old man there, not in a swimsuit, regular clothes. He sat there for hours just watching everybody play in the pool. And I was just sitting there cringing. I was like, you ain't got somewhere better to go sit? Like, it's just things like that. And that brings me to want to say, because this frustrates me, kind of pisses me off a little bit, is how much people turn their eyes away from this because they say, oh, I can't hear about that. Oh, that's too tough. They can read murder mysteries all day long about killing one another. They can read erotic novels. They can watch documentaries on serial killers, like one of the number one thing. They can listen to Investigation Homicide all day long. Turn on a case about kids being molested, and everybody turns away from it because it's too tough to hear. But that's the problem. That's why people can get away with it so easy, because you're not knowing how to look for it. You're not knowing how to recognize it in your own kids. You're not knowing how to recognize it out in public. That drives me crazy that people won't listen to it.
Yeah. I have worked a lot of cases where maybe it's parents who have split up and one parent is bringing in the child to file a report, and maybe the suspect is the other parent's new spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. And that parent will unfortunately sometimes side with the person they're in the current relationship with. And honestly, I do feel for them, because that's human nature to want to believe the person that you love, the person that you're intimate with. Like, certainly they wouldn't do this with your child. And so it is heartbreaking to see this kid having to like come forward and make a disclosure, and to have people not believe them. So why would kids come forward?
Yeah.
And tell their story, and they have to tell it over and over again. And a lot of times the predators will tell the kids, like, if you tell someone this, they're not going to believe you. So, of course, the kid doesn't say anything. And it tears families apart. There have been like marital relationships that split up. There are kids who go no contact with their parent because the parent chose the predator over them. There's so much just trauma and evil that comes from these types of crimes that is not just directly related to the physical interactions.
Man, that's I could go down that rabbit hole, being a divorced father of 2 young kids. And I'll talk about a little. That's one of my biggest fears. And I don't say that as like my ex-wife is. God help you, you hurt our kids.
Right.
If she gets to you first, God help you. And so like I know she would protect them like anybody, better than anybody. But I know that one day there is going to be somebody in her life around my children.
Correct.
And that's because I know those cases. I've recently I listened to one nearby that was it was a divorce situation. New partner came in who had older kids. The older kid ended up molesting the other ones. Horrible situation. And that's so sad, but again, it is so prevalent. And I think that's again what people miss is they just don't think it happens that much. But to give you an idea, there's a guy that is amazing. His name's Ryan Montgomery. He used to be the world's best hacker. Now he's the world's best ethical hacker. He took all of his hacking skills and he now catches predators, works with a lot of different government agencies, nonprofits, all that. And I remember a podcast I was listening to, and this made me sick. There's one group he hasn't been able to get into because the submission to get into that dark web group that at that time had over, like, I think 6,500 members in it, you had to submit a video molesting a child under the age of 1 to be a member of it. And like, as much as I knew how common it was, but then that, and at that level, and again, that's grooming. I know I saw something recently. I think they're classifying it as a terrorist group that is contacting kids online and essentially blackmailing them, grooming them. And that's, again, just protect kids. And that's kind of where I want to get into next. How do we protect kids? Where does it start? How does it start? And I know I'm directly talking, there's a lot of online now. So what do you see there with how they are targeted, and some stuff like that?
I think that the protection of children starts at home with the parents of the children, and making sure that the kids know anatomical names and things like that. And even if, let's say, something does happen to their kid, and whether they go down the criminal route or not, getting that kid the help that they need, the mental health, the trauma therapy, because I've yet to come across an offender who hasn't been a victim themselves of some type of physical or like sexual abuse. So, hurt people hurt people.
Absolutely.
And so, although it's not an excuse, it's a sign that you want to make sure to deal with that on the front end and give them the proper coping mechanisms to be able to become a good, upstanding citizen, in the future, and not become an offender themselves. Law enforcement has to do a better job of taking reports and getting the information that they need. The DA's office needs to be better at prosecuting these cases, even with nothing but the child's disclosure. The child advocacy centers where they do the forensic interviews for children. So those are key in these types of investigations of hands-on offenders, where kids make a disclosure, but they need to be interviewed in a way that isn't suggestive or leading. And so the child advocacy centers here in Mississippi, they have interviewers who are trained in how to talk to these kids and make sure that they are getting true stories, like they're not suggesting answers to these children, because depending on the age and the mental capacity of a child, you can very easily suggest an answer to them and they don't realize that you're suggesting it. They don't know any different. So those interviews and disclosures are huge, but sometimes DA offices do not accept a disclosure by itself as enough to move forward. They don't say that that's enough probable cause to move forward with a trial. And lawmakers, it is, I won't list off any of the names of the, I don't know if they're societies or groups that are out there, but there are groups out there in this world who promote physical contact with children.
Yep.
There are members of these groups who are judges, politicians. They are professors at universities. This stuff is not just for like the dark-seated web. You have very well-to-do people in society that this is normal to them.
Yeah.
It is, so with the LGBTQ community, these predators are trying to ride the coattails of the LGBT, and that's how the whole I identify as a female, so I'm going to go into a female's bathroom, and they're an older adult male, but they're actually a predator, and they are just using that type of legality to be able to say, oh, well, I can go into this bathroom. And it's very unfortunate and very sad, but today our society is so accepting of this type of behavior that either they just accept it or they're too afraid to speak out against it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I will say this. I'm not a supporter of LGBTQ, all that. I have my beliefs. I'm not judging you or anything like that, but I will give kudos, and I am proud. I've seen a lot of stuff where that community is not happy about these predators trying to, like you said, ride those coattails. And I've seen some prominent people that are in that community speak out, and I'm really proud of that, because that's the thing to me. And kind of on that note, since I made that comment, I'll say this is, if you're an adult, what you do with your life and what you do with others who are adults, that's your business. I don't care. We can be great friends. I don't have to approve and agree with everything. But anybody who hurts a kid, for me, I mean, it's just so cut and dry. But for a lot of people, like you said, it's not. And it's protected. And that's what's insane. Like guys like Ryan Montgomery and different ones who have these foundations that are going after these predators. The prominent people in business, entertainment, and the judicial system that are involved in it is so scary. And obviously you got a judge who's part of this. Well, they're not going to push down and hurt their community, because it's crazy the way they protect one another. I was listening to Tim Tebow, who's one of the big people in this, the other day, and he was talking about one of the chats that they had gotten into, that they were collecting evidence and finding these predators and finding victims and going and saving them. The amount of times these guys are in here, and maybe females, we say guys so much because it is more guy offenders.
Right.
But he said they were in the chat room, like, encouraging one another. Stay strong, brothers. Let me, share your stories. Stay strong. Like, tons of messages of keep fighting the fight. This is our fight. Like, rally crying for molesting children. It's when I wish we lived back in the Wild West days and could handle it different, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
Because if you're that sick, there's nothing that can be done for you, in my opinion, hardly. And shouldn't be. Lock you in a box at that point. It's just, I can put up with a lot of crime, and I can have a lot of patience and understanding for it. Second you touch a child, throw the key away.
So like you said, what two consenting adults do, that's two consenting adults.
Absolutely.
But a child cannot consent.
Yep.
And so that is where the issue lies. And when I say child, it's anyone. So for pornography, it's anyone under the age of 18. Currently right now in the state of Mississippi, for physical contact, it's anyone under the age of 16, depending on some certain criteria, if you're a position of trust, things like that. But I don't know. It is, I think that you use the word hurt, people who hurt children. And I think that a lot of these people do not believe that they are hurting children. Yep. And that is where it is, you have to understand the psychology of it. And especially in an interview with someone who is alleged to have been an offender, is when you ask questions, you have to catch yourself not using, did you hurt this child? I would never hurt a child, because some of these people believe that what they're doing is out of love. They love this child, and they're doing it because they love this child. And no matter what my beliefs or feelings or opinions are, that is what they believe. And it's not really my place to judge them. That's, God will get you on the back end. Like, that ain't for me. I think part of my job is just to hear their story, get the closure that the victim or the family needs, because a lot of them want to know why. Like, why this kid? Why, if you have a family of multiple children, but they only offend on one, you're like, why this kid? And I mean, it doesn't make it any better to know why, because a lot of times the parents will blame themselves. I should have known, or I shouldn't have let them go swimming at the neighbor's house, or whatever. And that's a whole other side of the trauma of crimes against children, is the parents, the families that blame themselves, when most of the time you would have no idea, unless your kid just keeps on disclosing to you and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things I was thinking about is, for anyone listening who has not really gone down the rabbit hole, like, I mean, how do I protect my kids? Or maybe you're starting a family. I want to talk about some of that. For me, I know one of the things that I heard was an interview with, he was like one of the top sex predators that had been convicted, serving life in prison and all that. And they asked him, how did you pick your targets? So he would abduct kids, molest them and all that. And he said when he was looking for new targets, his number one thing he looked for was families where the father was not a threat to him. And so, a lot of people immediately think, and this is where I'm going to kind of hit on some guys and kind of call this out, is he's not just saying absent fathers. He said fathers that aren't a threat. And frankly, there are a lot of men in the world that are not a threat. And to me, that's horrible. As a father, if somebody thinks you're not a threat, that you're so weak that I'm going to come hurt your children, you're doing something wrong. So that's just kind of something that hits a nerve with me, is, physical appearance, how you act with your family, how present you are. And, that was some of he went into a lot of detail. He was like, if I'm at an area and I'm looking for a target and all that, and dad's over here, on his phone, and the kids are 50 yards away at a park, that's easy target. If he's kind of spaced out, or if he's watching a family for a little while and, dad's always gone, it's always just mom with the kids. And then it went into other things like, well, if mom's by herself and there's 3 kids, that's real easy to snatch one of them versus mom with one. And there's all these things that people don't think about. When I was married and I would talk to my spouse about this and protecting the kids, she's great about this, thankfully, is like, go to Walmart, kids go in a buggy. Like, you're not going to have 2 or 3 kids, running around up and down aisles and stuff like that. That's like some of the stuff I think about. And even me, like, my kids know you're not getting out of arm's reach of me if we're anywhere. If we're at the park, I'm walking with you as you play on the equipment. Like, just simple stuff like that, because I sit at a park, and from a law enforcement background mindset, and then being so conscious of this stuff, I sit around so often, and I want to go talk to these girls I see. Their head in their phone. They haven't looked up for 5 minutes, and their kids are all the way across the park. I want to just go over to them and be like, I could have taken your kids so many times. Pay attention to what they're doing. It drives me crazy. It scares me. And that's kind of something else on that note. If you're out at a park, one of the things that raises the hair on my neck and that I immediately notice, why is there a guy walking around this park that don't have a kid with him? Mm-hmm. Like, that immediately, I know. And so just being aware. Mm-hmm. But now the side I don't know as much about is like the cyber side.
Right.
That's probably where you can step in. But that's some of my advice from a father. Number one, just be present. Being present deters so many people. So
yeah, definitely being there with your kids and like you said, being within arm's reach. I don't remember my parents ever talking to us about this kind of stuff when we were kids. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just don't remember it. But I distinctly remember that we had a code word, like a secret code word for if anyone was to come and like try and pick us up from school or pick us up from a friend's house and, hey, your parents told me to come pick you up. We knew, what's the code word? You ain't getting me without the code word. And yep. I don't remember how that came about. But like that, I'm 37 years old, I think. And I still remember that code word. And honestly, if someone was like, hey, yeah, I was talking to your mom the other day. Who are you? What's the code word? Yep. I remember my parents telling us about, and I don't remember if we had them, but kids with the little book bags that had the leash on it.
You were on a leash?
Yeah, because that's how you protect your children. Now, if you see that, people are like, "Oh my God, they're abusing their kids," and I'm like, "It's."
I'll be honest. I used to make fun of it. Then I had kids, and I realized how quick they disappear,
yes.
and I'm like,
they're like little ninjas. They just, yeah. So all the things that our parents did when we were little, like you get it now. You having your own children and us being in law enforcement and like seeing that the world is not a safe place.
No.
But when it comes to the places that you can't go with your kids, which is the internet, gosh, you just have to either stand firm that your kid does not have a phone. And I apologize for all the children that are going to benefit from me telling your parents your kids should not have phones. Yeah. They should not have iPads. They should not have access to the internet. But yeah, if that is something that you choose to do, you need to have every single password. You need to be following your kids on all these accounts. You need to be able to, at any moment in time, be able to take that kid's device and go into it and look and make sure that they don't have hidden photos or deleted messages, deleted photos, that they're not talking to people that they don't need to be talking to. And that these kids need to realize that social media is fake.
Yeah.
People might be one thing on a platform and they are someone completely different when they're sitting in their mom's basement playing Dungeons and Dragons, talking to you on the internet. People are not who they say they are. And they will target kids and adults who are posting things that are kind of sad or anything that makes them appear as though they have a vulnerability.
Yep.
Maybe kids post about, I just got grounded, my parents hate me, or my parents are going through a divorce, or, someone just died, something like that. And someone on the internet can see that and be like, there's my in. And it might start with them just liking a post. And then that person might randomly comment on a post. And then they might message the kid. And it starts off completely innocent. A lot of times it is someone pretending to be the same age, either same gender or opposite gender of the kid. And these kids they're kids. And so they believe what these people are telling them. And they are convinced to try and meet up with people. They are convinced to send inappropriate pictures, which usually turns around to them getting scammed. And, hey, if you don't send me money, I'm going to post these pictures on the internet, which can lead to a lot of mental health crises where kids end up taking their own lives because they don't know how to process or face this type of issue. It is, I mean, I could go on about the dangers of the internet.
And you just made me think of something that I haven't really thought about yet because, again, so much of my thought around this comes because of my kids and the ages they're at. So, like, specifically for me, a couple things that I guard against. My 7-year-old son, yes, he has an iPad that he plays on when he's at my house. He's usually right beside me. We're playing together and all that. But I know every app he's going in. He loves Minecraft. He's obsessed with it. But he actually don't play Minecraft as much as he watches it. Mm-hmm. And the Minecraft game he does have, I did research and I found the one where he can't talk to anybody else. Nobody can contact him. Roblox, he is not allowed to play.
Yeah.
I tell everybody, because I know from the law enforcement side, Roblox is one of the worst. And so I tell everybody, get your kid off of that. But you said something that just really made me think, especially for that preteen, teenage, is posting something sad. And that kills me because everybody knows, if you know me, you know I care about this kind of stuff and we talk about it a lot on here. Those are so vulnerable of moments. They're looking for somebody to like them, believe in them, encourage them. And that is the perfect opportunity for a predator to slip in and start with the simple, hey, I saw your post. I hope you're doing good today. Well, somebody showed interest.
Yep.
And now the rabbit hole.
Yep.
And I've heard of the cases and I've seen the stuff where they'll pose as the same age, and in today's world, especially with Snapchat and stuff like that, they'll send a picture because they think they're sending a picture to a 15-year-old boy and they're a 15-year-old girl. Well, no, that's a 30-year-old man. And after he gets that one, you're on the hook. They start threatening, and I've heard of this a lot. Hey, send me another picture or I'm going to send your mom and dad the picture I already have. And so for me, like, I think about my kids, I'm going to fight it like hell. They will not have access to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Until they are much older. And not just that's something else too, though. It's not all about age. Talk to your kids, educate your kids, train your kids, care about your kids, and then also notice if your child is going through something very difficult and you know that, but they're spending a ton of time on social media platforms. What are they posting? And that's a great point. Like, if you got a teenage kid and you don't follow them on their social media to be able to see what they're talking about and what they're posting, you're just begging for this to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I'm aware that a lot of kids will have fake accounts and things of that nature. Unless you just tell them no internet, you're not going to be able to stop them from having these accounts. But yeah, following them, following their friends, which might then make you look kind of creepy. But as long as you are creating an environment where you're open with the parents of these kids, and again, like you said, talking to your kids, kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Yep.
Kids at a very young age pick up on subtle shifts in mood, emotions. They may not be able to like really verbalize what is going on, but man, they understand so much more than we as adults do. I think because we put up so many walls as adults. But yeah, kids experience things just like adults do, and I hate whenever parents are like, "Why are you being so dramatic? Like your first boyfriend just dumped you, and you're devastated, and you're crying about it." Yeah, that's that kid's first boyfriend. This is the end of their world as they know it. Like, you have to take yourself back to when you were that age.
Yeah.
Or when your sibling was that age, and really put yourself in their shoes and understand that although I know that it's not the end of their world, they don't know that yet. Yeah. And they have to experience those feelings to be able to process and be okay and move on to the next thing that is then the new end of their world.
Yeah.
And gosh, just talking to kids, but it's so sad because you also have to help kids understand that not all kids have parents that are going to be okay with talking to them about such a sensitive thing. So you have to teach them that, like, maybe it's not okay to say anatomically correct words when you're at school because the school doesn't like it, or other kids think it's a bad word, and so it's this crazy. You have to teach your kid to be almost two different people, as if we don't already have issues with split personalities in this world. Yeah. But yeah. Gosh, it's so sad that we have to be that way with kids, but they're the ones that are going to protect themselves.
Well, and like for me, what I think about is I understand some people they think they're doing right by shielding their kids from it. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to watch about it. They would never let them watch this podcast because they want to shield them from it. But you're actually being very counteractive. Like I can tell you, like I said, I already have conversations with especially my 7-year-old. Like I tell him, there's bad people in the world. There are people that want to hurt you. And these are the things I need you to tell daddy about if they ever happen. Because that's somebody that wants to hurt you, and then daddy's going to go handle it. Like at 7, I'm talking to him I'm not telling him how they molest or hey, somebody's going to come beat you in the middle of the night if you don't. No, but I'm already building him up to where, when my daughter's, preteen, we're going to have a very real conversation. Mm-hmm. Hey, you ever take a picture and send it to a boy? Let me explain to you what could happen. Where all that picture can go, who all can see it, how they can blackmail you, and what it could lead to. That's protecting them. Shielding them from the conversation, you're making them vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You're setting them up to get exposed to that world. And so like that, for me, that's my number one thing I want to tell people is don't shield your kids from it. It's like cancer. Well, I'm never going to talk about cancer so that my family don't get cancer. No, you might want to talk about it so you can do things that take care of your body better. Yeah. Again, not talking about stuff is more detrimental than anything. You can help so much by just talking about it.
Well, and you don't always have to take the approach of talking to them about sex. I saw a TikTok the other day where a lady was saying, like, when your daughter is being her true, authentic self, and just hanging around and whatever, that's when you tell her, you are so beautiful. Whenever she's all dressed up and dolled up, that's when you say, oh, don't you look fancy? And it takes away their belief that I have to be all dolled up to be beautiful. And it kind of reinforces their like self-esteem because people who have high self-esteem most likely aren't going to feel the need to send someone nude photographs.
Yeah.
They're going to be okay with saying, no, that's not something that I do. And then that there's nothing that that other person can say to convince them otherwise,
Yeah.
because sending nude photographs is usually an act that you do to try and get someone to like you or to get someone to accept you or something like that. So even without talking about all the quote unquote inappropriate things, if you're doing the things that build their character and build their self-esteem so that they know who they are even at a young age, then they're far less likely to experience these types of things, because they're going to be able to say no and be okay with that person being upset because they said no.
Yeah. I love that. And I think about my little girl. If anybody that follows me knows my little girl's everything to me. But I, even now at 3, like, I'm constantly, oh, your hair's so pretty. Oh, look at your eyes. Like, and those are the things I compliment. And one of the cutest things every morning when I get her ready, it's a habit now. She'll look at me and say, Daddy, let me see my pretty self. And so I'll set her up on the counter and I'll tell her how beautiful her hair is and her eyes and this and that. And like, I like that you say that, is if you're teaching your kids, especially little girls, what's beautiful and how they should be taught to and stuff like that, there again, that red flag's going to come up when somebody does something different. And same thing with boys. I tell my son all the time how handsome he is. I use his sister. I talk to him all the time. And my mom and some of them laugh at me, is I ask him all the time, hey, what's your number one job? Protect my sister. Like, and I mean that. Like, I will teach him and train him. Somebody messes with her, you do what you need to do. And like, there again, though, if I got to protect my sister, I also need to protect these other girls too.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody did that to my sister, what would I do to them? So like, I feel like we live in a world where we're not intentional enough with our children, and we also coddle them too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I say I already talk to my kids about this stuff, we don't have 30-minute sit downs in the living room talking about sex to a 7-year-old and 3-year-old. No, it's little short. Hey, if anybody ever hurts you, you can come talk to Daddy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if anybody ever touches you here, that's something you need to tell Daddy or Mama immediately. Yeah. And it's just reassuring them of what's normal, what's abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, it's amazing what just talking and education will do. Because I know you probably see it. A lot of victims, they're in a vulnerable state when they become a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Well, am I correct saying that, you think?
Yeah, whether it's a very young child who just doesn't know, or they are a child who is vulnerable because of a situation they're going through. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, I'm on TikTok a lot. I learn a lot from TikTok. Social media can be great if you use it
absolutely
appropriately. But someone, gosh, I can't remember where this saying came from, but it was that children don't listen. Okay, you're not going to teach a kid by talking to them. They learn by your actions. They watch everything, and so when a man has a wife or a girlfriend, or even is treating his daughter in a certain way, opening the doors for her, or seeing when she's upset and talking to her about, tell me why you feel upset, and not like, just calm down, you're being dramatic. The little boy is seeing that and seeing the dad or the older brother or whoever leading by example, and they're taking that in because that's what they see, and they're going to turn around and most likely copycat what they see.
Sorry, we're looking at something on our live real quick, fixing that on the screen. So the last part of this I want to get into is law enforcement side. I want to dive in a little bit to a few specifics for anyone who's listening to this. The first one I want to tackle is if you are suspicious of, maybe you think some child sex crime, crime against child, predator, anything like that, what's the steps for reporting that? And kind of what happens once that's reported? Because there's two things I really want to tackle here. Is one for people to know what to do, but also to understand that I know some people will be hesitant to report something because they don't have hard evidence and they don't want to destroy this person. So I kind of want to put that to rest, because I know that that's not necessarily what's going to happen. It's going to be investigated, but you're not going to be on the news the next day after you get reported. So
Right.
I'd like to dive into that with you.
I am a huge advocate of, if you think something is going on, you need to make a report.
Yep.
And there might be some agencies that are watching this right now and rolling their eyes like, oh my gosh, we're going to get 1 million reports. I'd rather have 1 million reports that turn out that they're all like nothing to it than to have no reports and there's 1 million kids having horrible things happen to them. So if you think something is happening, then make the report, and you need to make it to the law enforcement agency where you believe the crime occurred.
Yep.
Because they're the people that will have the jurisdiction. Now, if it is something where it involves the internet, someone chatting with your child or whatever, you can file the report where you live, because you have the internet where you live, because this other person might be overseas, they might be in another state, things like that. But always just make the report, and please, please never confront the person that you suspect, because that gives them a head start.
Yep.
It gives them the opportunity to convince you that nothing's going on. It gives them the opportunity to destroy evidence. It gives them the opportunity to make contact with the kid and get the kid to take back anything that they've said. And then once you file the report, it goes from there. Law enforcement is a mandatory reporter, just like teachers and doctors, any type of therapist. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of others out there that are mandatory reporters. So we have to make reports to CPS. So once law enforcement gets a report, we then make a report with CPS. And CPS goes through their process, and every county has a different way of doing things. So I can't really say exactly what they'll do. Some CPS workers will immediately respond out, depending on if the offender is in the home or not. And then sometimes if the kid is not in the home of the offender, CPS might wait until they can, make a phone call and make contact with you later, Monday through Friday. Their goal is to kind of prioritize the safety of the child and to make sure that the child is not within a home where the offender is. So if, let's say, a parent is bringing in a child, making a report that the other parent or a sibling or something like that is occurring in the home, CPS could potentially remove that child from the home, depending on the accusations. They might remove all the children from the home. It just kind of depends. And they'll have their own set of things that happen behind the scenes, talking to a youth court judge and a whole bunch of paperwork and legal stuff that might happen there as far as placement of the child. Now, CPS will also make a referral to the Child Advocacy Center. Law enforcement can also make a referral to the Child Advocacy Center for an interview for the child. And this isn't just victims, and this isn't just sex crimes. So kids who are witnesses of possibly a sex crime or murder or domestic abuse. The Child Advocacy Center they interview kids of all kinds, and they really do help with a lot of cases and getting a lot of bad people put away, because they give a voice to the kids. So they're awesome. So once an interview is kind of set up, and again, that will occur depending on the severity of the allegations and depending on the age of the child, they'll prioritize when the interview can be scheduled. The younger the child is, they want to get the interview done sooner because they'll tend to forget things. And once the interview happens, depending on what the child discloses, law enforcement will be present during the interview in like a viewing room. And depending on what that kid says, at that point, that's where I'm drawing up paperwork, and it's boots to the ground. We're knocking on doors, finding the offender and bringing them in. And then we're going to interview them and give them the same opportunity that we gave the kid to tell us their side of the story, tell us what happened. And then depending on any type of evidence that we might get, whether confession or whether the child discloses some type of physical contact where there might be evidence, we might do a search warrant on a house or a car to try and collect that evidence, because we need that to support the case. Their kids will be referred to get a forensic, like, medical exam. Unfortunately, when kids have delayed disclosures, a lot of that evidence is already gone. It's not like an adult victim who has just experienced some type of unconsensual contact, and they can immediately go to the hospital and, get a kit done on them. It's not the same with kids, but they still need to get the exams done because you don't know what could be there. Transmitted diseases, things like that. I've worked some cases where kids actually contracted some things, and like, how do you explain that other than they had some type of contact with someone? So yeah, once you make that police report, the ball starts rolling. And for me, I don't make contact with the alleged offender until I hear what the kid has to say. And we as law enforcement shouldn't be questioning the children because we are not trained to interview a child. We can ask it's called minimal facts. So it's kind of the who, what, when, where. And you really just have to be like, so tell me what happened. And then whatever they say, you don't need to be asking for like detailed questions like you might an adult victim. Because a lot of times we as cops are like, oh, well, was it this person or this person? Yeah. And a kid is like, oh, okay, well, they only gave me two options, so I have to pick one of these people. And maybe it's not one of those people at all. Yeah. So
I'm really glad you said that. So, because something I was thinking about a while ago is if you are a parent or anyone, guardian who has suspicion, let law enforcement, let the forensic, let us do what we need to do. Because if you start trying to question the child too much, you're essentially tainting the evidence. Because again, law enforcement's not trained in it. It's a very special skill. And so if you start grinding that kid down, hey, what happened when you were at so-and-so's house? Did they touch you somewhere? What were you wearing? What were they doing? Where did you sleep? I forget all the correct terms for it, but you're building a story in their head that is then not going to be factual and correct. So I've told people before, like, be careful of that. Like, if you have suspicion, don't let them be around that person anymore. Go straight to the PD and report it. And the other reason for, I like you saying, if you have any suspicion, report it. I wish I could remember the statistic right now. I meant to look it up. You may know it, but at the point of conviction of a child predator, how many victims have they likely had? I've read a lot of different statistics. I know a lot of them pretty much say by the point that someone gets convicted, they have had dozens of victims a lot of times that they have messed with over their time. And so that's why I'm real big on, hey, if you report somebody that didn't and they're innocent, well, they're innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to get convicted on something like this, because this is one of the things in law enforcement that is looked at with a microscope
Mm-hmm.
before there's a conviction.
Right.
So any suspicion, report it. Because just think about, if you don't report it, there may be a dozen more kids after that
Mm-hmm.
that suffer that you could have prevented. So
Yeah.
just report it and let law enforcement do their job.
Yeah. And just because you make the report doesn't mean that you have to follow through with the charges.
Yeah.
That is very frustrating for law enforcement. Like, why did you even bother making the report? But sometimes adults have to make the best decision for the kid.
Yeah.
And that kid having to tell their story over and over again and being poked and prodded and, the public finding out, and maybe the offender is a well-known person in the community,
Mm-hmm.
and now the kid is going to be ostracized instead. There's so much more that goes into it that a lot of times there is a reality that in the best interest of that child, they do not follow through with pursuing charges. And that, that's something that I've had to grow in accepting, that for that kid's mental health, that's the best for that kid, that family. And it just kind of is what it is, and we'll get them next time, unfortunately, because usually there will be a next time. Yeah.
That is the one thing I hear about a lot, is this isn't something that they just stop.
Mm-hmm.
It don't stop.
No.
If you are a predator of this kind, it's not something you turn off.
Right.
And that's the part where I understand it, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I hear the interviews where they say, I can't help it, it's an urge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we need to put you somewhere where you can't access that urge. Like, that's plain and simple. So, please, if you have suspicion, report it.
Yeah.
Hands down. Other question around law enforcement, and this isn't to beat law enforcement up, but how is law enforcement handling this? And what I mean by that is, are there enough resources? Is there enough task force? How is it handled? Is it handled mostly at local PD? But what is the proactive side in law enforcement? And how is it proactive enough? I kind of have my opinion from my experiences, but is this enough? Are we doing enough?
I think that's a really hard question to answer. I think that the state of Mississippi is doing pretty good at working towards helping these kids, especially with the child advocacy centers. I think they are kind of on the forefront of their techniques. I know that Mississippi has been on the forefront for a long time as far as human trafficking and the resources that we have to provide to victims. But most of the time, this type of crime is going to be a reactive investigation, that it is going to rely on a child making a disclosure and an adult making a report. And then law enforcement can get involved. Now, the Attorney General's office has a cyber division that has the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that typically deals with online child sexual abuse material and things of that nature, but they do facilitate operations throughout the state where people who are a part of the task force can go and do undercover chats.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a lot more proactive. I've been a part of a couple of their operations, and I have facilitated my own local department chat investigations. And it's hard to explain how weird those types of investigations are because you're literally talking to dozens of people. You have to be on the right platform, so application or chat room or whatever, and then you literally have to cater your communication to whatever age and gender of the child that you're representing. And these types of investigations go on. Just the chat itself can go on for maybe as little as a couple of hours, or it can go on for months. And the weird psychological factor of, how kids text message and they might use the letter U for you, or they don't capitalize anything, they don't punctuate, whatever. And you start communicating regularly that way, and you're like, God bless, it has gotten into my head because you've trained your brain to talk like that. And it's weird. It is wild. But that's really the only proactive type of investigation that law enforcement is typically involved in. A lot of these civilian, vigilante types who they operate outside of the law because law enforcement is so confined by the law. We can't bait somebody into something, and we can't hack into someone's computer and things like that. So we are bound by the law and being able to do these types of investigations so that it will hold up in court. So although I don't always agree with these civilians that do these types of investigations, I get it. I get where they're coming from because they get to operate kind of outside of the law.
Yeah. Well, and I will say there are a few, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there are a few I see online that they're not law enforcement, but it's like they've talked to some law enforcement enough. They know how to do it from a civilian side that then when they take the bait, they call. And a lot of times, law enforcement will be present when they show up at Walmart or show up at the restaurant to meet the supposed 13-year-old kid. I really like that because they're able to, those guys are really doing something good there, really good. And it sucks. Like I say, I had my opinion on it a while ago. And so my opinion on it is I think you could always do more.
Mm-hmm.
The hard part of that is more takes people, money, and approvals.
Yeah. And
that's really hard, especially in a small town, local PD. And that's why I like ICAC, which I'm familiar with them, that's why they're able to do it. When you get to the state level, the federal level, and all that, it's all about funding. But I get it, to create a task force in a local PD, take 3 detectives and stick them on it. It's a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources. It's not an excuse. My opinion is figure out how to make it happen. But it's a big hurdle. I get that. I would love to see it in every department because to me, lay out every type of criminal there is. I'd rather catch that every day. Run all the drugs you want to. I'm going to go chase this guy.
Yeah. Anytime,
any day. I would rather the resources and the efforts go to that. So I do think we could do better. but I also understand, and from being involved in it, what that lift is to get to that point. But I hope we get there. I feel like out in the world right now, there's a lot more talk about this topic.
Mm-hmm.
There's more prominent and influential people
Yeah.
talking about it now. And it's kind of thanks to social media. Those who used to could, turn their head and change the channel from 60 Minutes and Dateline and all that would cover it here and there. Now it's really in your face. And I think that's where the social media aspect's helping, is it's getting the attention of more people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and although, yes, things do take, manpower and money, the great thing about Mississippi is the Attorney General's office is over the ICAC task force. And yes, it is termed a task force, and I know that is a very faux pas word to a lot of agencies, but it is not a task force in the matter of you are assigning someone to this agency. They will then go and work for this agency, and you're never going to see them in your office, and they're not doing things for your agency. That isn't at all how ICAC works. It is more of the local agencies are actually helping the AG's office because, one, it doesn't cost you any money. You sign an MOU to agree to work with the Attorney General's office with these types of crimes. They will then provide you training free of cost. They will, they have the ability to provide you with a laptop, with thumb drives and hard drives and free tools. They give you access to their digital forensics lab. Of course, here in Jackson, we have a lab at the AG's office, but there's a couple of labs down on the coast. There's a lab up in, I believe, Oxford just opened up a lab, and it's all affiliated with the AG's office. And so no matter where you are across the state, you can be a part of this task force, but you're still going to work every day. You're getting your regular cases. It is that when the AG's office receives a cyber tip, in reference to a crime, if they determine that it is somehow associated with your city or your county, they can send you and assign you that cyber tip, and then you get to work it. So it takes a case off of the AG's office and allows them to work the cases that are bigger across the state maybe, or that is in areas where they don't have affiliates of the task force, and they can assign you that case, and then you work it, and you can reach out to them and they can help you. They'll walk you through it, but you get to work it. And so it's kind of almost the opposite of what people think of as a task force.
Yeah.
And you get all kinds of free training, and you have the opportunity to go to operations where you can help in other jurisdictions. Of course, it'll depend on your agency as to how much they want you to help. But yeah, it's such a great thing. And I think that is one of the biggest things that Mississippi is doing. And I just wish that agencies would take the stigma off of the word task force, because ICAC is such a great resource that can help you with those types of internet crimes, but it also teaches you to deal with the hands-on crimes.
That is really good. Like, you just explained even more than I realized with ICAC. And I will say, when I was in law enforcement, that was something I kind of had my eyes set on.
Yeah.
But you're right. In law enforcement, task forces, mention you want to be on a task force, and immediately, what's it going to cost? How much time are you going to be away? Because most task forces, people that don't know civilians, is you're taking local law enforcement guy, attaching him to a larger state or federal agency, and you're losing him for X amount of hours a day or weeks. And then if he gets tied up into a case there, you're losing him. And a lot of times they're using local PD assets.
Right. Local
weapons,
PD is paying their salary
vehicles,
while they're
fuel.
working for the,
Yeah. So I love that you explained that.
Yeah.
I did not expect that. And so law enforcement across Mississippi, if you're listening to this, if you're interested in this and your patrol, your detective, whatever, go hound the heck out of your administration, explain to them what Amanda just said, and get on that task force and save kids.
Yeah,
Like,
even school resource officers, because the AG's office will provide a lot of like information that you can then go and put on seminars at the schools. They'll provide PowerPoints and things like that. So it's not just for people that are going to investigate the crimes. They're very understanding of they need people of every position to really be able to help.
I love that you just said that, because school resource officers, and got quite a few friends who are school resource officers, they interact with the kids more than anybody.
Yeah.
Like, go to a middle school, junior high, high school. Everybody knows their school resource officer. They all talk to them. Most of them love them. Some of them aren't great, but the kids love them. It's almost, I would love to see every one of them on that task force, but mostly, more than anything, because the training they're going to receive to be able to recognize it. And so that, there needs to be a push for that.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to start that other than, hey, go hound your local sheriff or chief that you work for until he lets you do it. So,
right. We need to tag the AG's office and Lynn Fitch. And
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that wraps up everything I wanted to talk about. And I really think that, we hit some stuff today that will bring awareness, but also educate on how to be more conscious, how to prevent, and then some understanding from the law enforcement side. So I've enjoyed this. Well, I don't ever enjoy necessarily talking about this, but I'm glad we did, and I've enjoyed you being here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime you want me to come on here, I'll figure out something else to talk about that's cool. A little more lighthearted.
Yeah, we need to do an episode. I actually have thought about this. I have a few guys in mind, and their names probably come to your mind, of need to just have like a funny PD story day.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Some we could talk about, some we can't.
Correct. Yeah.
But all right. Well, thank y'all. Thank everybody who, I see quite a lot of people have been in the live that we have going on TikTok. If you're listening to this on any other platform, do me a huge favor. Please subscribe, like, share across all of our platforms. We have a lot of stuff planned, more episodes like this, as well as episodes similar to our past ones. So please take the time to support us, and I hope y'all have a great weekend.